So hello there students, welcome back to another video lesson. So after nating i-discuss yung dalawang unang types ng variation which are direct and inverse variations. So yung next two types naman yung ating i-discuss. So mauna na dito yung joint variation. So for our lesson objectives, first, we will illustrate real-life situations involving joint variations. And then, we will translate joint variation statements as a relationship between two quantities given by a mathematical equation and vice versa. So, kung matatandaan nyo dun sa direct and inverse variations, gumamit tayo dun ng graph tsaka table of values. So, dito po sa joint variation, hindi po applicable yung dalawa na yon. Then, we will solve problems involving joint variation. So, bakit hindi siya applicable? It's because mag-iiba-iba po kasi yung formula kung paano i-represent yung bawat given statement. Hindi katulad ng direct and inverse variation, constant po yung formula. So, let's have joint variation. So, when we say joint variation, it is a relation which states that the product of the two or more quantities where K is a constant value. So, it is the product of two or more quantities. So, dun po kasi sa unang dalawang variations, dalawang quantities lang po ang involved doon. Dito po sa joint variation, since we're talking about joint, ibig sabihin, more than two. So the statement y varies jointly as x and z may be translated mathematically as y is equal to kx z, where k is the constant of variation. As you can see, dalawang quantities na yung nakapaloob dito, x tsaka z. Tsaka yung y natin, ayan. So, dun kasi sa direct variation, y and x lang usually ang ating nakikita. So, dito, meron na tayong variable, z. However, k is still the constant of variation. Hindi pa rin naman magbabago yung constant of variation natin. So, for two or more quantities, an increase in one quantity causes an increase in the other quantity as well. So, kapag yung isang quantity natin tumaas, of course, yung kasama niya tataas din. And then, on the other hand, a decrease in one quantity causes a decrease in the other quantity. So, kapag lumiit yung isang quantity natin, maapektuhan yung isa. Bababa din po siya. So, joint variation statements can be translated as a relationship between two quantities given by a mathematical equation and vice versa. So, as I've mentioned a while ago, so hindi po natin pwedeng illustrate yung joint variation using table of values and graph. So, applicable lang po yung table of values and graph kapag direct variation tsaka inverse variation po yung ating pinag-uusapan. So, let's have the first activity. Write an equation for each joint variation statements. So let's have the first two examples. The force F applied to an object varies jointly as the mass and the acceleration A. So, since yung joint variation natin, sinusulat siya as kxz, y is equal to kxz. So, itong statement natin na ito, pwede po natin siyang isulat as F stands for force is equal to K, the constant of variation, and then yung mass and acceleration, MA. So, yan na po yung ating statement. Yung equation natin, F is equal to KMA. Next, the volume of a cylinder varies jointly as the height and the square of its radius, R. So, volume, capital V, and then, sulat natin yung constant of variation. And then, based from the problem, varies jointly as the height. So, letter H, variable H. And then, the square of its radius. So square of its radius, that is r squared. So sagot natin is V is equal to KHR squared. So for the next two examples, the kinetic energy varies jointly as the mass, m, and the square of the velocity, v. Okay. So, pwede natin yung i-translate as E is equal to K m v squared. O pwede rin naman pong gamitin natin yung capital K for kinetic energy. Pwede siyang K is equal to km v squared. So, bakit v squared siya? It's because the square of the velocity. Next, the interest of a salary loan varies jointly as the rate and time, t. Okay, so the interest using capital I, and then the constant of variation, k, and then varies jointly as the rate, r, and then yung time, t. So, I is equal to KRT. So, for our last example, the volume B of a pyramid varies jointly as the area of the base and the height h. So, let's have V is equal to K, the constant of variation, and then the area of the base. So, hindi po specific yung base dyan. It's because marami pong polygons na pwedeng maging base ng pyramid. Pwede maging square, triangular, maging rectangular, kahit anong polygon po. And then, the height h, so that is h. So, our answer will be V is equal to K B H. And then for the next activity, solve the following joint variation word problems completely. Let's have problem number 1. If y varies jointly as x and z, and y is equal to 60, when x is equal to 2 and z equals 3. Find y when x is equal to 6 and z is equal to 7. So, yung una nating words dito, if y varies jointly as x and z, can be written as y is equal to k x z. And then, y is equal to 60 when x is equal to 2 and z equals to 3, isa-substitute lang natin dito sa y is equal to kx z in order for us to determine the value of k, the constant of variation. So, y is equal to 60, we write 60 is equal to k times the value of x, that is 2, times the value of z, that is 3. So, 60 is equal to, so k times 2, that is 2k, times 3, that is 6k. And then, we divide both sides by 6. So, the value of k is 60 divided by 6, 10. So, k is equal to 10. Now, since we have there the value of the constant of variation, which is 10, madali na lang pong kunin yung value ng y when x is equal to 6 and z is equal to 7. So, using y is equal to kxz, so that is y is equal to k, the value is 10, times x, that is 6, and then the value of z, 7, and then, i-multiply lang natin yung tatlo, 10 times 6, that is 60, times 7, that is 420. This means that the value of y is equal to 420 when x is equal to 6 and z is equal to 7. Reminder, we won't be able to determine the value of any variable kung wala po tayong constant of variation, wala po yung k. Next, problem number 2. If A varies jointly as B and C, and A is equal to 132 when B is equal to 11 and C is equal to negative 4. Find B when A is equal to 75 and C is equal to 5. Okay. A varies jointly as B and C. can be written as A is equal to KBC. Now, isubstitute natin yung mga given. A is equal to 132 equals K. And then yung value ng B, which is 11, times the value of C, which is negative 4. And then, 132 equals, so K times 11, 11K, times negative 4, negative 44K. And then, dividing both sides by negative 44 para matanggal yung numerical coefficient ng K. So, K is equal to 132 divided by negative 4, that is negative 3. Ayan. Next, find B when A is equal to 75 and C is equal to 5. Sulat na natin ulit yung A is equal to KBC para makita natin na B ang hinahanap. So, the value of A is 75 equals the value of K, that is negative 3. And then yung missing variable natin, B, and then times C, which is 5. Next, 75 is equal to negative 3 times B, that is negative 3B, times 5, negative 15B. Ayan. And then we divide both sides by negative 15. Ayan. So the value of B is negative 5. Let's have the next problem. The amount of gasoline G used by a car varies jointly as the distance D traveled and the square root of speed. Suppose a car used 30 liters on a 150 kilometer trip at 100 kilometer per hour. About how many liters of gasoline will it use on a 200 kilometer trip at 144 kilometer per hour? So, yung amount daw ng gasoline na kailangan ng car is nakadepende dun sa distance na tinatravel tsaka dun sa speed, square root of speed. So, para isulat yung equation of variation, so that is G is equal to K, and then distance, that is D, then square root. So, we have their square root of speed. So, sulat lang natin siya, KD square root of S. And then, kailangan natin kunin yung constant of variation, which is K. So, based from the given problem, a car used 30 liters on 150 kilometer trip at 100 kilometer per hour. So, 30 liters were pertaining to the amount of gasoline. So, that is 30 equals K times D. So, the distance traveled is 150 kilometer. Hindi po yung 100 kilometer per hour. So, kapag may kilometer per hour po siya, dalawa po yung unit, speed po yun. So, D is 150 times the square root of 100. Ayan. Next, 30 is equal to K times 150 times the square root of 100, that is 10. Next, 30 is equal to the product of K, 150, and 10. That is 1,500 K. And then we divide both sides by 1,500. So, K is equal to 30 over 1,500, or pwede natin siyang isimplify. So, divide natin by 30. 30 divided by 30, that is 1. Yung 30 po kasi yun yung GCF, greatest common factor. 1,500 divided by 30, that is 50. So, the value of K is 1 over 50. So, yung next naman, kailangan natin kunin yung amount of gasoline kapag yung distance is 200 kilometers, tsaka yung speed is 144 kilometer per hour. Nakuha nating constant of variation kanina is 1 over 50. So, sulat lang natin ulit yung equation. G is equal to K D square root of S. And then, substitute natin yung D, S, and K. So, G is equal to K, that is 1 over 50, times the value of D, which is 200, and then the square root of speed, that is 144. Next, G is equal to 1 over 50 times 200 times the square root of 144, that is 12. So, yung mga square root po na yan, perfect squares po sila. So, and then, multiply lang natin. Pwede natin i-cancel yung 50 tsaka 200. So, this will become 1. And then, this will become 4. And then, i-multiply lang natin yung mga natira. 1 times 4 times 12. And that is 48. And then, i-attach natin yung unit, which is liters. So, since amount of gasoline ang pinag-uusapan natin, liters po yung unit. So, ang kailangan po na gasoline, amount of gasoline on a 200 kilometer trip at an average speed of 144 km per hour is 48 liters. So, let's have problem number 4. The interest of a loan varies jointly as the rate and time. The loan interest at 5% for 2 years is 8,000 pesos. Find the loan interest at 6% for 3 years. So, yung constant of variation na hinahanap natin dito is yung principal amount. So, yung kung magkano yung ilo-loan. So, if you are aware for the formula of interest, that is I is equal to PRT, where I is the interest, P is the principal amount, R is the rate, and T is the time. So, yung kanyang equation will be I is equal to K, R, T. Now, let's substitute 8,000 pesos as the interest, and then K, and then the rate. So, yung rate natin is 5%. So, ang 5% mo na ito, kailangan po natin i-change into decimals. And that is 0.05. And then, time natin, 2 years. Next, 8,000 is equal to the product of K, 0.05 and 2. And that is K times 0.1. So, 8,000 is equal to 0.1K. And then, i-divide lang natin both sides by 0.1. So, the value of K is the ratio between 8,000 and 0.1, and that is 80,000. Okay. So, ang constant of variation natin is 80,000. So, ito ang magsisilbing principal amount, yung P, 80,000. Pwede natin lagyan ng peso sign. So, yung next na kailangan natin kunin is yung loan interest. Kung yung rate niya is 6%, and then yung time niya is 3 years. So, yung K natin kanina, yung constant of variation natin is 80,000. Then, sulat lang natin, I is equal to KRT. So, I is the unknown. And then, K is 80,000 times the rate. So, yung 6% po, kailangan po natin i-change sa decimal. That is 0.06. Times yung time natin, which is 3 years. So, 3 lang. And then, i-multiply lang natin 80,000 times 0.06 times 3. So, kapag minultiply po natin yan, ang lilitaw po na sagot is 14,400. Okay. So, since pera po ang ating pinag-uusapan, kailangan po may peso sign. Ibig sabihin po, 14,400 po ang magiging interest kapag nag-loan ng 6% at 3 years. So, after natin i-discuss yung joint variation, so yung next type ng variation na i-discuss natin na huli is combined variation. So, makikita nyo po dyan na pinagsama po yung mga uri ng variation which are direct variation, inverse variation, tsaka yung kakadiscuss lang na joint variation. Kaya nga, combined. So, yun lang. Maraming salamat.